I've given every Premier League team a point deduction that is equal to the points they scored last season in real life. So that means Man City start on a huge minus 89 points, whereas Southampton, Leeds and Leicester, who are back in the league, start miles ahead of everyone else. So today we're simulating 50 seasons to answer a few questions. Who will end up winning the Premier League the most? Will we ever see a season where every team finishes on 0 points? And can Man City actually come back and win the entire league? Well, from simulation number 1, we might have an answer to that first question, as Chelsea go on to win the title. Obviously, last season was terrible for them, and so is this season really, but clearly in Football Manager, the players are highly regarded. They've got really high current abilities, loads of them with over 160 out of 200. So naturally, they went on to win a lot of games. I suspect we'll also see Liverpool win quite a few titles as well. On the ground, they had a poor season last year by their standards and have a very good team in the game. But I'm really impressed that Bournemouth and Man City finished on exactly 0 points, meaning they had the exact same record as last season. But I can't decide who is the bigger disappointment in simulation number 1. Leicester started on minus 34 points and ends on minus 7, but Brentford finished 28 points behind what they got last season, but they did pick up 4 more wins over the season than Leicester. The top scorer of the season was of course Erling Haaland, and you won't be surprised to hear that Haaland was the top scorer in 25 out of the 50 seasons, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin being second best with 6 as the top scorer. Haaland's best season was in Simulation 5, where he scored 28 goals, as Man City finished in an incredible 5th place, picking up 99 points over the season, where obviously Chelsea won the title again. But interestingly, they changed managers halfway through the season after they sacked Pep Guardiola. So clearly the game isn't taking into account the severity of the team's points deductions. Because Man City were in the relegation zone for a vast majority of the season, the board felt the club were underperforming because they weren't taking into account the minus 89 points they had. This is actually a recurring theme, as you can see here. Plenty of managers were sacked across the season for poor league positions, which actually is quite a funny byproduct of this experiment. But was there a season where Pep Guardiola wasn't sacked? Well, no, he was sacked 50 out of 50 times in every single simulation, but simulation 32 was very harsh because Man City missed out on the title by 1 point from Everton after dropping just 7 points across the entire season. And they would have won it if Haaland was the league's top scorer. Instead, Son won the accolade, as Haaland played just 22 times this season, getting injured halfway through it. Pep was sacked in January when the club were in just 15th place. In fact, he only dropped 4 points, but because that was only good enough for 15th, he still got sacked because the board thought they were way below where they should be. And this was the closest Man City ever came to winning a title. 1 point away from an absolutely incredible feat. But that does give us the answer to one of our questions. Everton are pretty unlikely winners of the Premier League, particularly in this experiment, but they did win it on one other occasion. In Simulation 42, the Toffees beat Chelsea by a single point to lift the title. However, it's Forest in 3rd place I am more interested in, as they had the wildest swings across the 50 seasons. They finished in the top 4 11 times and in the relegation zone 5 times. I don't quite know what to make of that. Does it show us just how inconsistent Forest are? Or how inconsistent the game is? Or is it just a really good display of how random the game can be and how much the little factors like morale and team dynamics play into having a successful season? Forest never finished in 20th place though, but 8 other clubs did. And Brentford came 20th on 14 different occasions, with Fulham's 10 and Brighton's 9 rounding off the podium positions, saving Manchester United their blushes. In fact, United got relegated 18 times and in Simulation 7 finished in 19th place, despite Marcus Rashford finishing as the league's top scorer. I think this highlights how important form is, because there's no way Man United should be losing 14 games. But they could never get in any sort of form, which then affects player morale and dressing room atmosphere and the entire squad dynamics. And so obviously it becomes very easy to then snowball into relegation. Obviously Erik ten Hag was sacked, and it only makes sense that Chris Wilder succeeded him. How do you feel about that one, Manchester United fans? Let me know in the comment section down below just underneath that subscribe button. Simulation 10 gave us our most unlikely top scorer as Sasa Kaladzic hit 18 goals to take Wolves to 10th place in the table as Chelsea win yet another title. In general, their title wins aren't actually that impressive. If we sort the league table by a number of wins, Chelsea are only in 6th place. It's just because they were so poor last season that they have a huge head start over the other traditional top 6 teams. I do think in reality though, Chelsea in 3 seasons time or so will have one of the best teams in the world once all their young players have developed. And then they will probably dominate European football for 10 seasons after that. I'm not a Chelsea fan, but if I was going to predict who's going to win the most Premier League titles in the next 15 years or so, I would say them. As long as the players they've bought develop to the level they should be playing at, then they will be a force to be reckoned with, just like they were in this experiment, as they won 27 out of the 50 simulations. Liverpool had a good run with 14, but again they had a poor season for their standards last time out, and as did West Ham, who won 4 of the titles. I was surprised Southampton only won 2 titles, and I can't believe Leicester and Leeds didn't win a single title given their starting points. But in Simulation 4, Aston Villa ended up winning their only title of the experiment, as they had an insane season with 24 wins. Ollie Watkins and Moussa Diaby both hit 20 goals across the season, with Zaniolo on loan and Jacob Ramsey also in double figures. I also quite enjoyed this simulation as Arsenal finished rock bottom of the table. But I also enjoyed Simulation 20, because in this simulation, Aston Villa finished rock bottom of the table, the only team to win the league and come 20th. Interestingly, Watkins and Diaby only scored a combined 8 goals less than their title-winning season, but the rest of the team aren't able to step up. Plus, they also don't get Zaniolo on loan this time around. But they also come bottom of the table on 2 other occasions. Simulation 47 saw them 20th place as Liverpool went on to win the title, and Julian Alvarez scored the goal for Man City to win the Champions League final. And then in Simulation 50, Villa were relegated alongside Manchester United and Brentford in a simulation where Leicester had their best finish of 2nd place, 4 points off the title. But looking over all of the data, I think I have found the worst team performance of any of the 50 simulations. And that belongs to Leicester. Leicester picked up just 4 wins and 23 points total to finish 19th place, 1 place lower than real life. I mean, how bad do they have to be for that to happen? They got 2 of their wins in the first 7 games of the season before going on a huge run of being unable to win anything at all. Now, looking back at the league table, if you add up all the points totals as positive numbers, it equals 146. Now, I was hoping we'd see a simulation where every single team finishes on exactly 0 points. Turns out that is a pretty impossible thing to want to happen because it didn't happen at all across the 50 simulations. But there was one simulation that was closer than any other. Simulation 33 had 4 outliers in West Ham, Chelsea, Brentford and Manchester United, but every other team was within 8 points of their total from the season before. And there was only a 10-point gap from 4th place to 17th place, with 3 teams finishing on exactly 0 points. So the table looks impressive until you add up all the points as a positive number, and then you get 123. Which means we're 123 points away from getting the perfect 0. But when you consider that 72 of the points come from the top and bottom 2 teams who vastly over and underperformed, it actually is pretty impressive for the rest of the clubs. But it does mean we didn't have a season where every team scored exactly 0 points, so this one gets a big X. So as expected, Chelsea won the most titles with Liverpool runners-up. But in 2nd place, they swapped over, as Liverpool were runners-up in the Premier League 13 times compared to Chelsea's 10. Everton were the most frequent side in 3rd place with 9 ahead of Southampton's 8 times, who also happened to be 1st and 2nd when it came to 4th place teams. But the team in the top 4 the most was Chelsea, as they finished in the top 4 46 out of 50 simulations. Liverpool and Everton finished off the podium places with some very impressive results. Fulham finished in 18th place 11 times to lead ahead of Brighton's 9 times. And they also finished most frequently in 19th place with 13 finishes in that position. But it was Brentford who finished bottom of the table on the most occasions with 14. However, it was Fulham who had the worst record. They were relegated in 34 out of the 50 simulations, closely followed by Brentford and Brighton, who saved the blushes of the fourth worst team, Manchester United. Now, instead of deducting points from every single team in the Premier League, how about instead we give teams more points for losing a match than they get for winning a match? And then we applied it to the entire English Football League. Well, the results were pretty hilarious, and you can find out exactly what happened with this video on screen right now.